Bruce, come here. Come here. Here comes the wolf bear. Hey, bud. Hey. We're out here on an abandoned golf course, closed golf course, practicing our social distancing with this COVID-19 going around. And we're just doing some testing between GoPro and an Akaso brand camera. But I'm using this monopod with a dual rig. And we're gonna go around doing exact recordings and some photo comparisons with these two guys using a big abandoned golf course as our landscape. And that's gonna be it, having a lovely walk with Kara behind the camera. Excellent camera work and very spring-like attire. Let's get to the comparisons and see what's up. Can you personally even tell the difference between an expensive camera and a budget camera on screen? I've mentioned this before with some other comparison videos. YouTube's compression is almost a 10 times factor, so the original file you have is getting compressed 10 times on screen. So will it truly matter whatever camera you're using? And lastly, here's the 10-second Cole's Nose version of this entire video. 4K action camera footage is always going to have the exact same amount of pixels up across the screen and down the screen, so with proper post-editing color correction techniques you can essentially make any one camera's footage look like or look very similar to another. So with that all being said, let's get further into this video. So we're comparing the GoPro to the Akaso V50 Pro model. It's the 4K 30 frames per second version of the camera. It's about 120 bucks compared to the $450 GoPro and up line, so you're looking at about a third the cost. To the look, you got basically the same size, you got a touch screen and you have remote capability. The Akaso, I've seen in other videos, people were mentioning it comes with a ton of accessories. It's basically like a 20-in-1 pack. It comes with 2 batteries, that's rare for an action camera, which makes it very handy. Going with more similarities here, both have 60 frames per second options in HD and 30 frames per second filming options in 4K. Sensor sizes are both the same and both have a in-camera image stabilization system software running behind the scenes to keep your footage smoother. Comparing cameras side by side, we have again a lot of the same options. Going through menus, you'll see a lot of the same similarities. You get resolution, frame rate, white balance, exposure options, viewing angle options. You have sharpness options, the stabilization on and off. You have ISO exposure controls, just a ton of permutations that make it possible out of the box to get these two cameras to look almost the same. Okay, kind of like I mentioned, these two cameras are definitely not the same, but their settings can almost be made the same. So I tried to go as neutral as possible in both cameras to start these clips off, and right off the bat I noticed that the Akaso basically just sits more naturally at like a -1 stop for exposure and slightly more contrast. So if you just look at Bruce's black levels, it just appears a little more punchy than the GoPro. GoPro in its flat color mode is always going to be very pale, assuming you're doing more editing with that color later on in your post editing and color correction tweaking. Okay, in these clips we're comparing the image stabilization. We're doing kind of a screen-to-screen side swipe again. I put down in the corners the actual bit rates of the files after I downloaded them, so you'll notice the Akaso is actually taking in a little bit more information per second. Yeah, my biggest takeaway from this review is that the GoPro is definitely doing a little bit better with the image stabilization. I suspect that's where the money might go in terms of the product if all other specs are potentially exactly the same. And you'll notice right there, there's kind of like a time warp jitter effect on the Akaso as it spins. But in very slow speed, more or less, it's all the same. Right here, I'm just showing you the exposures. You can see that both are pretty poor at getting the highlights out of the end of the tunnel. But both are very similar in picking up the details of the graffiti in this tunnel. And pretty stable both ways. Okay, this was just a horrible idea, and I've discovered this from the past. If you guys look at my old K9 drone gimbal video, never put a GoPro mounted straight to the dog harness on a dog. It's just going to give you this chaotic footage. But nevertheless, I'm showing you what both image stabilizations do. And they're both just a little bit better than what an original GoPro might be doing without the stabilization on. And again, my rule is never put a camera on a dog without a gimbal and keep it away from the water. But yeah, once the camera stops, both go pretty darn smooth.
Boy, how's that, guys?
These are some still photos. Put down the dimensions. The DPI and bit color depth is exactly the same. GoPro's turned up about twice the file size. Not to say it's taking in twice the data, because as you can see, resolution's a little bigger on the Akaso side. And if I were to just pick out anything, I'd say that the Akaso's almost got a built-in feathery effect. Again, it's really hard to select fine, normal, or super fine pixels. I had them both on normal, and they still turn up a little different. But like I always say, if you don't have the other two cameras to compare to, and you're just using one, you'll never be able to see that true difference. And I think both are pretty darn good for a action camera, still camera. So watch these two first photos coming up. They're both going to be GoPro. This is the flat profile that you would expect to do some post-editing work with. And the next one here is the GoPro color mode, which to the initial eye looks way too punchy. Might be a cheap-like photo, but is indeed just a super saturated profile. And the next one here is now looking like quite a natural photo, and that's the Akaso completely normal default setting inside camera. So not too bad there, not too bad. In these next shots, I was trying to get as much detail in the frame as possible, so all of these fine lines of the straw work. And we're walking along the river here after the snow melt. A huge flood came through, made this like an apocalyptic movie scene. But it just gives you tons of information in the frame to compare against. And we're just going to walk a little bit here with Kara and swipe the screen back and forth so you can see the stabilization on both cameras going to work. The Akaso in camera is just slightly more zoomed in than the GoPro. It's again hard to match the view modes, but I think we did pretty good here, and I think both cameras are doing pretty well for picking up ultimate detail. And again, you just notice a slight jitter on the Akaso versus the GoPro for its stability. And the next clip here is me running at Bruce. This is the camera running now with a lot of action in the frame. And again, just to my initial eye, they both look pretty darn similar. The colors are similar. And you might just pick up a little more jitter, like I was saying with the Akaso. And then here, just pulling my best selfie work, just doing a little bit of spin, and just look right down to that GoPro stick handle. You'll see just a little bit more shimmying going on with the Akaso. But again, if you never knew what the GoPro looked like, I'd say these are pretty darn close, especially with that third difference in price. Okay, concluding this video off, as I mentioned in the Cole's notes at the beginning, I'm showing you two raw clips right now, one from the Akaso, one from the GoPro, and I'll show you what the color correction tool can do to get these two to almost match perfectly to the eye. In most cases, most of us are owning only one action camera, so you're never going to have two to compare footage from. So therefore, you'll essentially never know what another camera's footage looks like. So as long as you get good at making your own footage from your camera look great, that's all you ever really need to ask for. Up, yeah, good boy, good boy. All right, so thanks for watching, guys. Bruce and I have had a good time. Like always, straight to the points, straight to the facts, nitty gritty. You guys always be the judge. I won't interfere too much. You can see from the footage one way or another, and you have my narration through the whole video. Closing out for basically a third the price. You guys decide, is the Akaso brand worth it or not? And until next time, Gavin Peacock Flip Society out. See you in warmer weather.